Hey folks, I wanted to welcome everybody to the June edition of the Agile Austin Agile at Scale meetup. My co-host Leland should be here soon as well. But what we're going to do before we get into the presentation is just for those of you who are first-time attendees of the meeting or the SIG, we want to just talk a little bit about Agile Austin and what our mission is. So we're a 501c6 nonprofit, and we love to connect people and foster professional growth and have events like this. So we just recently had board elections for Agile Austin, and so we have a few new board members to talk about here. We have Chase Callaghan, who is now our Chief Product Officer, Sid Markle, who is our Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, and Jenny Halcomb, our Chief Financial Officer. Many thanks to our most recent departed board members from the board. And the Lee Allison was our vice president, and the founder of Agile Austin, co-founder Scott Killen, was previously our CFO. So we thank them for their service, and in next year's board elections, we certainly hope to see additional people step up, as we love to rotate out the positions every year or few years. So you can also contact us at board@agileaustin.org if you have any questions. We also want to thank our sponsors. Our platinum sponsor is Agile Velocity. So thank you very much to them for their many, many years of support for this organization, as well as our silver sponsor, Ad Meliora Coaching. Both are great sponsors and great supporters of our community overall. Agile Velocity has a discount code here, and you can use the code Agile Austin for 15% off all of their public workshops. And if you are interested in becoming a sponsor and getting advertisements like that, and through many other avenues as well, you can reach out to contact@agileaustin.org, and we would love to have you, because that's what makes events like this possible. As well, we have a sustaining membership fee, which is only $35, and that gives you access to our Slack and member portal. You can vote and sit on the board, and additional events and training discounts are available as well. That $35 has stayed the same for years and years. So this is the only piece of the US economy that has not experienced inflation. So take advantage of that. So we also have other meetups as well as the one that we're here, the Product and AI SIG, which is our most newly formed special interest group. We've got another exciting meeting coming up, I think, at the end of this month. So you can check out our meetup page, meetup.com/Agile Austin. Most of you are already there because you signed up for it on here. And so we also have Leader SIG, which is taking a break for the summer, and then the book club, which is continuing to go on during the summer. Check out the meetup page for information on those, as well as the coaching SIG. So just a little bit about us. Leland Newsom has been running this meetup for many years now, 2016. I joined him in 2020 and still going strong. Really have been enjoying this. And as you'll see, we've got some other speakers lined up in the coming months. Topics haven't been set, but we've got Paul Given plus an additional speaker in July. And then in August, longtime Agile Austin supporter board member and community member Carrie Suti will be speaking on another topic. And then in September, we actually have an opening. So if you're interested, our email addresses will be at the end of this introduction deck. But I want to introduce to you Todd Miller and Ryan Ripley. They are going to be talking to us with the very entertaining title, I must say, Your Agile Transformation is a Crime Scene. So really looking forward to what they have to tell us today. And so again, if you have anything that you want to talk to us about, either leland.newsom@agileaustin.org or ben.rogers@agileaustin.org. And we'd love to hear from you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to let Ryan and Todd take it away. Thanks, guys.
Ryan, I have this deck open. Should we open it up?
Yeah,
We start sharing the screen.
Let's do it.
Rather than make sure I'm sharing the right thing. Hope everybody's doing great today. Happy Friday. It's always a good day. Hopefully you have a little bit of an extra pop in your step on a Friday. Ryan, can you see my screen?
It's up there, bud. You're good.
Okay. Assuming that you can see my screen, I'm going to make the assumption everybody else can. Yeah, cool.
I think you
All
got
right.
it.
We have visuals.
Visual sweet. Okay. All right. So we're going to kick this off by so I don't want to say this is necessarily a case study because this is just common stuff that Ryan and I see all the time in organizations when it comes to the agile transformation. I say that in quotes because some of this is probably going to look familiar to you. And then we're going to talk a little bit about a different way to view a transformation. So we're going to kick it off by talking about Adam. If there's someone on here named Adam, this is not about you. Unless maybe it is, I don't know. So we're going to talk about Adam. And so here's what we want you to imagine. It's 2016. Adam's named a new CIO of Evercorp. It's a large fintech firm. He was a director at his last job and had a lot of success with Scrum there. So he comes into this company. There's 400 plus people now underneath him in this department, and he makes it the goal. Let's become more agile, right? Hires consultants with training and transformation stuff. He's working with high-level agile consultants to form goals around this agile transformation, and this is sort of what it looks like. They have a strategic agility initiative. They're using Now Next Later. 1 month from now, we're going to have a strategic agility team. Next, we're going to get some formal training and have a pilot project. We're going to get them certified and kick them off. And then 12 months later, our goal is to expand to 5 more teams and train leadership in what Agile is. They have goals. We know what we will be successful when faster, better, more efficient. And then there's some parameters around those, some measurements that they're going to use. Does this seem familiar? Have you seen something like this before? You throw it in chat, you can unmute. Has anybody worked in an environment where these goals and this sort of thing happens?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Is this a program setup?
Program setup? This is for an entire department.
The X number of teams launched sounds very familiar.
Yeah. So Rachel, you see that before? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's fast forward a little bit. Let's go to 2019. Here's Evercorp in 2019. Adam spent about $5 million on this training, consulting, on the path to become faster, better, and more efficient for customers. So talking about customers, customer-centric, right? It's agile. Internal stakeholders are surveyed, and it's a success, right? The IT department feels like it's no longer a closed door operation. Big room planning, stakeholder transparency seems like it's increased. It's supported by better than expected data. Adam is walking around talking about 3 years later, they have transformed. They are now agile. Here's the dashboard that they're using. Adam brags about at C-level meetings, right? He's really proud of this. They're deploying faster. Deployment success rate is 76%. Velocity is increasing. They're better, more predictable. Satisfied stakeholders, 78% key customer satisfaction, and they're more efficient. The one thing that's lagging here is estimated versus actual, right? We're not quite there yet, but there's 351 certified employees and 23 Agile teams. The Agile transformation was a success. Or was it? Any teams here? Anybody working on teams that are gauged by these kind of things?
Very, very similar metrics, but I don't know if I would call them all green metrics.
I like what you're throwing down, Jeremy. All right. So the story does continue here. Adam leaves, right? CIO is not a long tenured position. Adam leaves. In comes Patricia. It's 2022. By the way, this is Patricia Kong, product owner for, what's she product owner for, Ryan?
Enterprise.
Enterprise, yeah. Product owner for enterprise at scrum.org. We used her picture in here because we like to make fun of Patricia. She's awesome. She's one of our good buddies. So she's a new CIO, and she's trying to get situational awareness with what's happening with the company. And just things feel off despite this dashboard of metrics, despite everybody heralding the Agile transformation as a success. She's just getting some signals that things feel a little bit off. And here's some of the things she finds. There's a lot of stuff in flight, a lot of stuff being worked on, and everything is green. You know, green, red, yellow, everything's green. It seems very internally focused on process, not customers. Doesn't seem like there's really great alignment between what the business objectives are and what IT is doing. Doesn't seem like there's very good alignment there. She can't seem to find much data on customer production usage or customer satisfaction. So she's not really she can't seem to find any signals on what's actually happening with the customers with the products that they're delivering. Teams are not releasing frequently. There's a lot of defects. She's noticed an uptick in the number of help desk personnel over the past 2 years. More spend is going to help desk. Why wasn't that on Adam's slide deck? HR is increasing employee turnover. It's a little bit higher than more normal, and there's a decrease in employee satisfaction. And there doesn't seem to be any transformation budget information available. What was it exactly spent on? Seem familiar? If you say no, you're probably lying to us. I'm just kidding. It's Friday. Ryan and I are going to joke at some point here. So be prepared.
I've never seen this, Todd. This can't be true.
So here's what Patricia does. Here's what she does is she starts to think and talk in terms of goals. She meets with the CEO. Really, the CEO is very customer centric, business driven. She's the CIO, and so her job is information technology here. And what she comes to find is that in Evercorp, they're trying to get people out of brick and mortar banks. Right? It's more expensive for a person to walk into a bank and staff a bank than it is for someone to do a transaction online, right? However, there's an issue with this is because people don't quite trust that. They want to go into a bank. They don't want to do their banking online. And so in alignment with the CEO, she sets a strategic goal for the organization. Our long-term objective is to make it safe and easy for a customer to do online banking. We know we will have achieved this when we see a 20% increase in customers using online banking tools. And she takes this and she makes it well known across her 400 plus team, like her side of the organization. This is our strategic goal. We're in alignment with the CEO. Intermediate goal, shorter term objective. So strategic goal is a part of evidence-based management. We'll define evidence-based management then, but a shorter term goal. Strategic goal, this is years. It could take years to accomplish this, right? Intermediate goal, more short term, think 6 months-ish. So she forms a hypothesis that increasing the confidence levels of online tools to existing customers could be a good start, right? So strategic goal, alignment with the entire organization. This is something the organization is trying to get to. She has a hypothesis that confidence level could be something that we can go for. By the way, she's also talking with, the people that report to her and people on the ground, seeing if it's even possible. And she defines a near-term objective. To make existing customers feel confident in our existing online banking tools, we will know we have achieved this when we see an increased customer confidence score from 2.2 to 3 or above. So she starts digging in and talking to teams and says she would really like to create alignment in the organization around this. And one thing she finds is that the help desk frequently has a ton of calls around an online loan application, Everloan, right? We were very creative with our names, by the way. I blame Ryan.
Probably my fault.
Probably Ryan's fault. It's the biggest source of customer complaints, quality issues. Ironically, all the data that Adam was touting as a success this team held true to. They were actually very good with estimated versus actual. They had stakeholder satisfaction, and their deployment success rate was a staggering 98%. They look like an all-star team. The old metrics look good. What isn't in there is what production bug count. What was happening with production bug count. And the Everlone team even agrees and admits that they've really just been in build everything really fast mode and never dealt with architectural problems, right? So the team decides, given Patricia's new intermediate goal for the department, that what they really should do is in the short term, in the next month, our short-term objective is to increase the quality of the customer experience. We know that we have achieved this when we see a 25% reduction in production incidents. All right. And so with all these goals in alignment, what Patricia says is we need to measure these some way. And so these are the four key value areas of evidence-based management. We'll define them in a bit, but she introduces these, and here's a couple things that she's interested in. What she views as unrealized value, customer satisfaction, like satisfaction gaps, things we aren't currently doing today, is customers that aren't using the online tools, referrals of other customers for customers by other customers. In current value, things that we are doing today, customer confidence, customer satisfaction, active online customers. These are things that we are doing today. That's what she's interested in. Time to market, how much work is in progress? How many things are we working on at once? How old are those things that we're working on? And how frequently are we releasing across her portfolio? Some things about team effectiveness, ability to innovate. What's a production incident count? What are defect trends? How much work is being done on new things versus maintenance versus expansion, right? These are the things that Patricia is interested in measuring. How do you think this contrasts with Adam?
This one feels a little more detailed as far as like, we have this plan, this is how we're going to execute this plan, where the first case, it was just kind of like a sticker, rubber band sticker on it.
Just to kind of amplify that idea, not only is it how we're going to track, it's how we're going to measure, right? So Adam's plan, how would you have ever known that they were successful or not? It wasn't defined, right? You know, part of why we say your crime scene or your transformations are a crime scene is because the consultants show up, cash all the checks, and never show you whether or not they actually had an impact. You got robbed.
Yeah, to Ryan's point, how many Agile consultants, highly paid Agile consultants, can answer the question, was it worth hiring me? Is this working? So what you end up with is scoreboard metrics like Adam got, with goals that don't create alignment, that just have arbitrary outcomes to them, or not even an outcome, I was like outputs to them. And it can look like you're successful when you're not. Ryan and I think that this is the biggest problem with the Agile industry right now. We're not living in reality with what we're measuring and how we set our goals. You can look successful. There's a couple companies that we could name. One specifically that's headquartered in Texas that had a really successful Agile transformation, and their software gets people standing in terminals. Right. And so we believe the question to answering, is Agile working here, is evidence-based management. And what we just walked you through with Patricia's example was evidence-based management. The structure of the goals, evidence around what's happening with those goals. And then one thing that we'll talk about here in a moment is empiricism. How do you know that those goals, how do you know you're achieving those goals? How are those goals transparent? When are you inspecting them? And how do you change course if that's not the right goal, or we decide that we got far enough with it, right? So empiricism. One thing that we put together is how Patricia would make transparent what was happening. And here's what we would consider to be a pretty solid evidence-based management dashboard. Now, this isn't mentioned in the evidence-based management guide, but this is a tactic a lot of organizations use when using evidence-based management. It's creating a dashboard to make and show and make transparent what's happening. Here's the goals that Patricia set. And then these are the things that are being measured in regards to those goals, right? These are the reality of the situation. Some people may not like to see the news that you're going to see here, right? Production incidents. If we look at the real story behind production incidents, you might set off a 3-alarm fire with other C-levels. Patricia might. It might make the teams look bad, but we have to live in reality, right? What else stands out to you in this, Ryan?
I think it's that living in reality that is going to be the tricky part here. It's in the first example, it's easy to, I mean, I can't tell you how many projects I was on that on time, on budget, within scope, delete all the financials, change the profit center numbers, move on so the reports don't work, and never ask about whether or not it was worth doing. And that keeps you out of trouble. That's corporate politics in at least in the US today. This type of thinking basically says, look, we're spending a lot of money. Are we spending it well? And if we're not, if we're using a framework like Scrum or some other agile practice, we have the opportunity to pivot and change quickly so that we're not throwing good money after bad ideas. Right? And so sometimes that's a little scary because guess what? Sometimes we have bad ideas. It's not always safe to admit that. It's not always safe to expose an executive's idea as being quote unquote bad. But the truth of the matter is we're all human beings. We are wrong about something each and every day. And the fact that we're wrong in a complex environment about customers who change their minds in markets that don't even make sense anymore shouldn't be shocking to anybody. Right? What we ought to be doing is using this as a radar to make sense of where we're at, where we're going, and whether or not we're making good investments and adapt constantly. You know, it's but it's a shift. And so sometimes we'll have to be super, super careful when we have information that could make someone else wrong and really understand how to use that effectively to get to better solutions, not to embarrass people and all those interpersonal things that. So what I see here, Todd, is opportunity. This smells like opportunity to me, but it also looks really dangerous if it's handled incorrectly.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Ryan, because I think that was a good segue into talking. On this left side, we have goals. Strategic is a big goal that your organization is trying to chase, very longer term. Intermediate, usually shorter than strategic, but still a long duration. If you're a Scrum dork like us, intermediate could be associated with a product goal, right? I think like a 6 month to maybe 1 year maximum time horizon, 6 months being my preference, 6 months even shorter. Immediate tactical goal, if you were a Scrum dork like Brian and I, you could say that you could associate with a sprint goal 1 month or less. And that's how we get empiricism. So this is empiricism in action and evidence-based management. So these little bubbles over here on the left, you can see it's almost like a windy snake. Those are your immediate tactical goals. And what you're trying to do is every immediate tactical goal should be a step towards accomplishing your intermediate goal. And then every intermediate goal should be a step towards accomplishing your strategic goal. All of these goals, we believe, should be outcome customer-centric oriented goals, right? They should have something that is going to have a measurable change in customers' behavior for the positive, right? I guess since we've gone through this, Ryan, we should do a little bit of evidence-based management introduction.
Yeah, maybe we should at least explain how it works to at least a little bit.
Yeah, you want to talk about the elements?
Yeah, so evidence-based management has goals, evidence, and empiricism. What's interesting is it's easy to get hung up on the measurements, but this is actually a goals framework, right? So Todd talked about a strategic, intermediate, and immediate tactical goal on the last dashboard. Those goals are what we're really trying to achieve. It's the whole point of using the key value areas and the key value measurements or the KVMs to actually, so the whole point of using those is to actually achieve or measure progress towards the 3 levels of goals. Metrics on their own are simply uninteresting without the context of the goals we're trying to achieve. Empiricism is a twist that I think makes EBM unique. At least it's typically not explicit in OKRs and in other frameworks that we're supposed to go back and revise our goals, revise the key value measures that we're using, and that we're continually inspecting and adapting the way that we measure towards our goals. We're even inspecting and adapting our goals. It's totally possible that any level of goal could become, that we could identify it as unachievable and have to pivot or change or refine it or destroy it, recreate it, which I think makes it incredibly unique. But we do have goals, evidence, and empiricism. The goals give us direction. The evidence tells us whether or not we're moving in the direction we want. And the empiricism makes us check and recheck along the way. Does that make sense? The 3 key value areas, I went by that very quickly. Unrealized value, current value, time to market, and ability to innovate. The top 2, unrealized value and current value, these are market driven. Time to market and ability to innovate are organizationally driven. So what's also unique about this framework is that we're not just looking within our 4 walls at our capabilities. We're looking at what's happening in the marketplace, the impact we're having in the marketplace, and perhaps opportunities that we're not yet taking advantage of. So this is certainly a more holistic viewpoint that we're trying to achieve as we assess our progress towards our goals. Did I miss anything big, Todd?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think you're good. And on the ensuing slides here, we'll make sure you all get a copy of this. We have definitions for all of this stuff. You can also check out the evidence-based management guide. There was just an update to it last month, 2024. So there's definitions of everything here. What we wanted to do then is spend the rest of the time doing Q&A. What I want to point out is that evidence-based management can be applied at the organizational level, at the portfolio level, and for a product, right? What we're talking about here is how Patricia is defining it at an organizational level, right? If you were a product owner or you're working with a product owner on a very specific product, you could apply evidence-based management, the goals. Hopefully strategic is in alignment with your strategic goal of the organization. But the KVAs might be different, the things that you're measuring underneath the key value areas, and then how you make it transparent and use empiricism on it may be just a little bit different. We've also used evidence-based management for a personal improvement framework. I use evidence-based management for fitness. I keep promising that I'm going to write about how I use that. I've been using it now since like 2020. I have a little framework that I use for fitness, but it's really applicable as far as goal setting and how are you taking steps and progress towards achieving those goals. One thing I will show here, and it's on the slide, we have a free EBM YouTube playlist. There's a QR code for that. We have a QR code for the EBM guide. Little sales pitch for Ryan and I's public classes that we talk virtually. And Ryan, myself, and Will Seeley created a company called Evidence-Based Management, or Evidence-Based Company, and we have a course that we teach there. It's not a certification course. It's a course on evidence-based leadership. So with that being said, I think, Ryan, unless you have anything else to add to the deck, we just do Q&A.
Yeah, I think it sounds good.
Cool. Hopefully in regards to evidence-based management, but we're happy to answer any other questions. We didn't want to go too much longer than 30 minutes on a slide during a Friday afternoon. That's exactly how we get people to drop. But we want to open the floor to talk about anything as it relates to Adam or Patricia in this case study, or evidence-based management in general. So we'll pay attention to chat. Feel free to unmute, ask anything you'd like.
That was really good. Thank you for sharing that. That was super interesting. One of the items you guys mentioned about was the goals itself should be quite customer orientated, and you should be basing that on what the customer wants, customer needs, and using those metrics to drive change and anything else. How do you find this working in the larger organizations where you find shareholder importance more than customer importance?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's what, remember when Ryan said you have to be a little careful with this? So if there's a flight that's been, or if there's an initiative that's been in flight for a year, so I've had this exact experience with evidence-based management. Then you start asking these questions. What was the strategic reason why we did this, right? What was the business case for this? How was our customer benefiting from it? You could be asking questions to people that aren't necessarily willing or wanting to be vulnerable. And I found that out the hard way, right? So there is some circumstances where you have to be careful about navigating this. What we have found, though, is with strong support from C-level and business, that the business really likes this. But what happens is, gets lost in the fray is this IT versus business crap that we're still doing in 2024, right? Let's be honest, the business needs us and we don't get paid without them. So I don't know why it's not a partnership. Instead, it feels like two walls, right? So to answer your question, I think in a lot of circumstances in larger organizations, you need to kind of step into this. You can't go guns a-blazing into it. But somewhere along the line, the C-levels made a strategic decision on why you're doing what you're doing, and everybody needs to know it. So we're working with a really large organization now, and they are doing wonderfully with evidence-based management. The C-levels from the business and the IT side are all working together to make it very clear what their strategic decisions were. And it's just funneling down. And Brian and I have talked to them, and we've been working with them on EBM for quite some time. And their sprint reviews are just phenomenal at this point. Like, it's real data on what's really happening. No one gives a crap about what's happening with velocity or things like that. It's painting the picture of the reality of what's happening in the organization. So I don't know if I fully answered your question, but what I would say is you have to back into it a little bit. You can't just go, what's the strategic thing and why are we doing it? Because that's probably a good way to at least get reprimanded a little bit. If not, if you're like me as a consultant, get your contract cut.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Hi, this is Diane. So back on your KVA chart where you were showing just kind of that breakout of the different piece of evidence, it's the things on the right, like those are super easy to kind of, or easier, I guess, maybe to define the things on the left, like the unrealized value and ability to innovate. So maybe could you talk a little bit more about those things on the left? They're a little bit harder. I feel
It's a great question. We're actually working through an unrealized value exercise for our own company right now.
Okay.
So we're sorting through, what are things that people are looking for in the market that perhaps we're not offering or we're not being loud enough about. Maybe we offer it, but we haven't made it clear that we are. And so part of it is, I think the unrealized value section is really figuring out non-intrusive, easy ways to ask questions of your customers that basically, can we ask a 2 or 3 question kind of survey to our customers where it's short enough that they'll answer, or they're more likely to answer, especially if they're fans of ours. But also the answers are meaningful in what direction we should go in next. Right? So short and sweet, can we get some answers? But at the core of it is actually finding your customers and asking them, what do they need? And more specifically, what do they need that we're not doing? And so it comes in the form of surveys. It comes in the form of reaching out to buyers at some of the larger partners of ours and just saying, hey, what do you see in the market right now? What are the things that you're shopping for? So it's building those relationships. So it's surveys, it's interviews, it's questions, but in all cases, what we're trying to do is identify something called a satisfaction gap. What is the current experience with us? What is the desired experience, and how do we close that gap? And so it's surveys, it's interviews, it's questions, it's feedback. So Trustpilot is used heavily by scrum.org, and we get a lot of comments there. We do net promoter scoring on all of our courses, so we can see trending Todd is an absolute data nerd. He loves that title. I'm not being mean. And so he can see the inquiries for different classes, ticket sales. We can see that maybe product is trending and Scrum Master is declining, or vice versa. And we start looking in those areas. So it's a lot of different areas. I think especially with unrealized value, though, you're digging into customer conversation stuff that's a little less comfortable. When it comes to ability to innovate, what you're really looking at, I think the big question here is, why are we bad at our job? Right? So where does the context switching happen? What are the defect counts looking like? How long does it take to run a build? All of the things that prevent us from innovating on new ideas, all the things that slow us down, all the things that hold us up, all the things that keep us busy but not effective. And I think that's a little bit easier, but again, you're getting back to, like, if you go to your Scrum team and say, hey, what are the 10 reasons that delivery is so difficult? They'll give you 100. And then there's your ability to innovate issue, right? At least it's a good start. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that helps a lot. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Ryan said, unrealized value could also be our competitor just launched a new product.
Yeah.
How is that going to impact us? Or it could be, here's a really good idea for a new feature. I wonder if people will use it. And what's our fastest path to test whether that is a viable feature? It could even be a product. And these are things that we aren't doing today. And I just thought I'd expand upon UV a little bit. And ability to innovate, to be honest with you, we really believe that's where most of Agile lives, just in one quadrant of this. Yep. Sure, there's all kinds of Agile product management stuff out there to do with these top two. If you're talking Kanban and flow metrics, they're down somewhere in ability to innovate and time to market. But for the most part, we believe that Agile tends to live in ability to innovate. Something like Scrum. You're really improving your process, you're improving your product, but there's no answers on what you're doing with UV or CV.
Right.
This fills that gap.
All right. Thank you.
I have a question. First and foremost, thank you guys. Thank you for coming. Been watching you guys for a year now. Legends. But you are. How can I implement evidence-based management from the bottom of the totem pole in the technical space, again, in my larger organization? Do you recommend, like how you said to the other person about like kind of like not tiptoeing around people's feelings, but it seems like collecting that evidence and then finding a way to present this evidence? Or is it more like a different way?
So Patricia Kong made a really interesting observation about how I implement evidence-based management. And she said, for whatever reason, probably because you're a techie, that you tend to start in ability to innovate, right? So that might be a really interesting place for you to start, measuring things about what's impacting your team's effectiveness. But don't forget about everything else, because inevitably, as Ryan said, if you don't have goals, we feel very strongly that people's behaviors in offices really are mostly impacted by how goals are set and what's being measured. So you might find it easy from that tech side to start with ability to innovate. How many projects am I working on at the same time? Things like, what's our production bug count? Are we doing a lot of new work or maintenance work? Those kinds of things. And the evidence-based management guide in the appendix has some like example key value metrics. You could start there, but don't stop there, right? I start there because I like to, that's what gives me senses as to what's happening everywhere else. Other people start in other places. I think it really depends on who you're talking to. Like if you're working with a product owner, you might want to start with UV and CV and have that conversation. But if you're on that team, you're a builder, you may want to start with ability to innovate and kind of work up from there, right? And then start filling in things for the other KVAs and then get to that goals conversation.
Okay.
Don't stop at the KVAs. It has to get to the goals, or you won't be, this won't work effectively.
Okay.
And that's the hardest conversation.
So, jumping in again, speaking to hard conversations, I'm looking at the value, what value is currently being delivered, how long does it take to deliver value? How have these conversations gone when you need to explain how you measure value? Because if I'm doing a security patch or an API upgrade, how is the value of that measured compared to a website uplift value? So how do you have those like priority calls, how do you measure value?
So part of it, look, value is very contextual. And so I think that's the big difficulty of defining value. In the case of security updates and patches, you're doing risk mitigation, right? And so you frame it in value can be risk mitigation. If we have a data leak where we let 1,000 customers, emails and credit cards and all that stuff get out in the wild, that's a news event, and that's a sales hit, and that's a stock price decrease. And so I think you start thinking in terms of that. Value can also be revenue, right? So maybe the website uplift might lead to more sales, but if we don't do maintenance, the response time is so slow, no one buys anything. And so I think you start thinking in terms of money and customer impact, regardless of what you're doing. And if you can't find that customer impact or that risk mitigation or the true either soft or hard dollars behind what you're doing, it might be time to question why you're doing it.
Mm.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I would put a security patch under current value. I don't know if we've ever really talked about that, Ryan.
Could be ability to innovate. Could
yeah,
be,
I think having to do constant security patches is impacting your team's ability to innovate, your team's ability to be effective. So if you're finding yourself constantly doing security patches, maybe it's time to evaluate the technology behind what you're using, right? Because that's slowing your team down. So yeah, I think ability to innovate, Ryan, would be a security. Not to say it's not value, because it is stuff that's really important, because inevitably it could impact your customers, but there's not a direct correlation to that being something that is satisfying to your customer. Doesn't care that you just did a security patch, is what I'm saying. You do. You do.
To kind of shareholder conversation, if you're sitting in a prioritization call with 6 execs, the CIO, and you've got 4 product owners pushing the same priority for the same delivery team, what value conversation are you going to put forward to say, this is a higher priority than this at this point in time for the next quarter?
I think that's product owner work, right? So I think really a product owner needs to have and understand the why behind it. And in terms of evidence-based management, are you trying to please your current customers through CV, current value? Or are you expanding upon current stuff that your customers are getting? Or are you trying to fill a satisfaction gap? We're trying to give customers something that they didn't have before. You may also say we need to improve our ability to innovate because our teams aren't effective at all because of the amount of technical debt we have. Or you may be trying to speed time to market. One of the things we talk about a lot is it's okay to concentrate on one KVA, but in the short term, so long as you don't lose sight as the holistic picture of what's happening.
Sure. Thank you.
So what about greenfield projects in terms of measuring value? Like you're maybe 6 months or a year out from actually delivering something. What does evidence-based management look like in that scenario?
Brian, you want to start with that one?
Not sure I understand exactly where you want me to go with it. Can you rephrase this a little bit?
Sure. So in a lot of the examples you used, you have an existing organization where the principles are applied. In other words, customer satisfaction, some of the outcome-based delivery metrics. So let's say you've got a team that's spun up, or even a whole division, whatever it is. It's a fairly large project, but it's completely new value, new functionality for customers. It really nothing exists in terms of things that could be measured on a customer value until it's actually delivered. So how are you measuring the delivery value before it's actually delivered to customers, I guess would be a way to rephrase it.
I'm not. Value 0. And now what we're trying to figure out is how do we get to, and this is where I think Scrum comes in. This is how do we get to a done increment that could be used and assessed and reviewed by a customer as soon as responsibly possible. right? That's the deal. And so the other quadrants might help us, if our ability to innovate or time to market are lacking for some reason, even on a new greenfield project, we got to fix that rapidly because we need to get something in front of a customer sooner rather than later to ensure that what we're doing even makes sense, right? And from a value perspective, so what if you do this? What if you adopt that mindset and what you're doing is risk mitigation because you're protecting budget? What if the value early on is we're doing very small experiments to discover what's truly needed to prevent risking millions of dollars later? What if that's the value?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
So I think, but early on, the urgency is not necessarily CV. The urgency is, it could be an opportunity. So you might be trying to be opportunistic towards a satisfaction gap. So the urgency might be towards, unrealized value, time to market. I think those are the two that I would look at more closely in your scenario.
Yeah, and don't forget these.
Yeah, the goals, of course. And actually, early on, I'm trying to invalidate the goals as quick as possible. My mindset is I want to prove all of these wrong so that we don't spend too much time on bad ideas. And if I can't prove them wrong, then I'm on a good track.
Totally makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you could create a dashboard and it's going to look, I mean, let's be honest, this project is red. It's not green. It's red because we haven't delivered anything. And you could create a dashboard. What's the satisfaction gap we're trying to fill? We have nothing that we can currently measure under current value. Time to market, we don't really have anything we can measure under time to market because we haven't released anything. We don't know that time to market, I like to classify as time to learn. You can measure things under ability to innovate. But I would bring this up every sprint review and just say, hey, we haven't shipped yet. We know that. We're all in alignment with these. Here's where we are today.
I gotta get that one more time from you, Ryan. You said you want to prove the goals are wrong to avoid spending time on bad ideas. And what was that other piece?
I'm not sure what the other piece would have been. I'm just trying to invalidate these things as soon as possible so that I know that, and if I can't invalidate them, this is the other half of what I said was, if I can't invalidate these goals and I have a hunch, or I can at least know that I'm on a good track, right? So if I can't prove them wrong, if these goals continue to hold up, if the customer feedback and the measurements continue to support the goals, then we have a good sense that we're on. I'll never say guarantee, but we have a good sense that we're on a really, really good track.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. You guys have made my money.
You're welcome.
I just got hired to be a tester for this big project, major revenue implications. And I was a user, and then I taught people how to use the product. I applied to be product owner, but I didn't get selected. I didn't let it jade me. But I'm trying to bring as much value as I can as soon as I hit the ground running, shorten the time gap to learn, and from being able to listen to you guys talk, kind of expand my thought process to not just holding myself accountable, but the whole team and everybody involved in the project accountable with EBM. Thank you guys for real.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks for calling us legends.
I
don't know how true, maybe legends in our own minds.
I think the problem is you have to be dead first to be a legend. So it's like, oh, not yet. Anyway.
Time check, we got about 10 minutes left, so fire away. Any other questions?
Since I got you guys here, any tips you could give to me? Maybe buy your book too. I'll take that too, but any tips you guys could give me, specifically with everything I said just now.
So I'm a big fan of trying to put EBM at a personal level. And so just understanding the impact I'm having on the organization and just trying to think about, I think this would be my advice to anybody working for a company right now is you need to be able to clearly articulate the goals that have been set for you, right? And your interpretation of said goals, and then have within the key value areas, have measurements that demonstrate you're either working towards those goals or you're not, or the goals need to shift or whatever it is. But having that evidence that you're being successful throughout the year and using that as a vehicle to talk to your management, I think is incredibly smart, right? I think having evidence that shows you're doing exactly what you've been asked to do and that you're solving the problems and meeting the goals that you've been asked to meet is wildly powerful right now. And if I were to go back into a company someday, the first thing I would do is sit down with my boss and say, here's what I believe are the 3 levels of goals that are going on in my career right now. Here's how I believe I have the biggest impact on helping you and the team be successful. Here's the things that I'm using to measure that these things are or are not happening. And I'd love your input. And just use that use EBM as the vehicle to demonstrate your own personal value if you can't use it anywhere else.
I love that for like a performance reviews and stuff like that. That's really powerful. Yeah.
But you're proactively, you're controlling the narrative and the conversation. I would never let anyone else tell me the value or impact I had. I would try to have the evidence and the framework to discuss it so that no one else can steal that narrative from you. Otherwise, you're just a number on a spreadsheet.
Igor has his hand up.
Yeah, it looks like Igor. You want to come off of mute? There you are.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So it's really insightful. I'm interested. What do you think about making approach of evaluation evidence-based management with OKRs, especially for transformation? How is a good approach from your perspective and your practical experience? If it's really applicable and makes sense.
We have a pretty strong stance on that. And I think this is based off of, Ryan, I don't want to speak for you, but I know this is based off of both of our experiences. We've never seen OKRs used well. We see OKRs as a micromanagement tool to drive outputs. So maybe we're jaded by them. Our preference would be that you replace them with evidence-based management and the goal structures. Too harsh, Ryan?
Perfect. Spot on.
Yeah. Now, the intent is there with OKRs, and when used as by design, I think that it could be complementary to evidence-based management. So the intent is there. The issue is that oftentimes with everything else, right? This happens with Scrum all the time, and it's going to happen with evidence-based management. It grows with popularity. The intent is different than the implementation. And so I think that what we're trying to drive is, because evidence-based management has been around for a long time, like 10 years, and it's just gaining popularity right now. Maybe we can fight some of those bad behaviors off that have happened early on, and we're trying really bad to combat the LinkedIn stuff that's happening around how goals should be set. But that could just be our jaded opinion. If you're using OKRs right now in line with your customer as intended, then great. Then they're complementary to evidence-based management. But that just hasn't been our experience.
And I guess same story about KPIs with evidence-based management, because KPI even more about micromanagement in comparison to OKRs.
I just think with OKRs and KPIs, they're missing the empirical secret sauce. It's funny. I've consulted at a number of organizations where I would come in and like, Ryan, we've got these 9 OKRs that we're working towards. And I'm like, well, how do you know that these are the 9 that you need to do? And well, we think they are. And so what would happen if you found out that one OKR wasn't something you needed to do? And the answer 9 times out of 10 is, well, we would still have to do it because we committed to it. And I find that really irritating. It's like if you find out that first of all, this is a company that had never achieved more than 4 or 5 of their goals in a year. So my next question was, why do you have 9 when you know you can't do more than 4? And so then I was asked to leave the room for an hour, and I went for a nice long walk. It was on like this office building, had a really nice nature preserve, and I kind of wandered around and wondered if I was getting fired. When I came back, they had 4 OKRs, and then we, with some KPIs tied to them, and then we started talking about how we would invalidate or validate and how we would enhance, and eventually we just started talking about EBM. I mean, the empirical slant is really important. And I think the fact that we're looking at market features, most OKRs and KPIs are completely blind to what's happening outside of the company. And I think that's just a mistake. Teams should understand the impact they're having outside the 4 walls. So I'm not a fan of any of the, look, I'm not saying they're bad. I think Google and others have been super successful, but they're kind of the unicorn implementing them. It's not the norm. And so what I love about what Ken did with evidence-based management is that he made the empirical nature of it, it's intentional. Like he made it implicit that you will inspect and adapt these, and you'll do it continually. And I think that makes it quite different. I don't know, anything else you would add there, Todd?
Mm-mm.
Do you guys have examples of which companies and stuff are using this over OKRs? Because I'd love to read up if they have stuff online on how they've either made the shift, are using this. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're under NDAs with most of the companies that we're doing consulting.
There is one that I think we've gone back and forth on this. Should we go approach them to do a full-blown case study? We're probably at that point. I think we might look to do that, but like Todd said, right now we're under NDAs with the companies we're working with.
But is there any organizations that are using this in a similar format that you guys aren't working with, that are using this rather than OKRs? Or using evidence to show companies are using this?
Yeah. I know scrum.org has public case studies that are available. Let me see if you go to scrum.org/EBM, you'll find a ton of great information out there.
Right. Will do. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are getting close to the top of the hour, so I wanted to make sure we thank Ryan and Todd. So throw some clapping emojis on there if you can, or clap in person, clap on camera as well. So great job. A lot to think about from this presentation. I will say that we will have this up on our YouTube channel by early next week, the recording from this presentation, and we will post that back to the meetup page. And I'll hand it back to Todd and Ryan. Any closing words or thoughts?
From us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's always fun to get to talk to different groups about EBM. We were actually, we got to visit the Microsoft campus in Boston a few weeks ago to go, discuss EBM at that site. And, the responses are usually, we didn't know this was a thing, and this sounds so great. And so please go to scrum.org/EBM and get started. There's plenty of free resources on the Agile for Humans YouTube channel. We have a full series. Like there's 16, 17 videos, I think now that walk through the whole framework. Todd and I also, along with Kurt Bittner and Patricia Kong, there's a book. And so if it's part of the scrum.org series, so it's Unlocking Business Agility with EBM. If you really want to deep dive it, but you know what? There's honestly so many free resources. Use those to get started. And then when you get stuck, grab the book. And there's a lot of great stuff in here. I really think Todd or Kurt and Trish and I certainly contributed, but I think Todd really pushed a lot of EBM theory forward with the book. I think between him and Kurt and Patricia really banging ideas together and going back and forth, they really changed the landscape of how this should be viewed. So there's some really neat stuff in here that's not published anywhere else. I know every author says that, but in this case, you know, I think Todd especially pushed a lot of theory forward, and you should check it out. But, you know, leverage the free stuff first, of course.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thanks for the recommendations, and we are at the top of the hour, so we will take off now. But thanks again to Ryan and Todd. Really appreciate it, and everybody have a great weekend.
Thanks,
All right,
guys.
everybody. Thanks for having us. Cheers.
All right. See ya.